Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of an animal that was, for a very long time, the most important engine on the entire planet, the horse. Seriously, from building massive empires to just plowing our fields, their story is completely tangled up with our own. So let's get into it.
I want you to just stop and think about this for a second. Before we had steam, before electricity, long before the internal combustion engine, what actually powered our world? For thousands and thousands of years, the answer wasn't some machine. It was muscle and bone and a beating heart. The answer was the horse.
For millennia, the horse was literally the living engine that shaped human civilization. It powered empires, it connected entire continents, and it completely transformed both trade and warfare. Our journey is going to start way back, out on the vast steppes of Eurasia.
Just look at this timeline. It tells this incredible story of escalating power. It all kicks off around 2000 BCE with domestication, which, fundamentally changed how humans could move around. And it didn't take long for that newfound mobility to be weaponized in the form of the chariots. We're talking about the ancient world's tank. Fast forward to the 2nd century BCE and the Silk Road is booming. And guess what one of the key currencies was? Prized horses. And this all leads up to the 13th century with the Mongols, who just perfected cavalry warfare and built the largest land empire in history, all from the back of a horse.
This quote from a Chinese envoy back in the 2nd century BCE, it just perfectly captures the almost mythical status some horses had. He was describing these legendary heavenly horses from the Fergana Valley, animals that were so big, so fast, and so strong that the Han Dynasty traded tens of thousands of bolts of purest silk just to get them for their cavalry. That demand for powerful horses was a huge driver of the Silk Road. So here's the most important takeaway from all this. For most of recorded history, the horse wasn't some luxury. It wasn't a hobby. It was the essential technology. It plowed the fields, it carried goods, it moved people, and it was the core of every army. It was the living, breathing engine at the absolute heart of society. But then everything changed. A new kind of engine showed up, one made of iron and steel, and this marks a really dramatic turning point in our story. The moment the horse went from being this universal necessity to, a niche specialist. Okay, this number is just staggering. In 1890, the United States had 13,800 different companies building horse-drawn carriages. By 1920, that's only 30 years later, just 90 were left. That is a 99% collapse. The car didn't just compete with the horse. It wiped an entire industry off the map in a single generation. And this slide right here perfectly illustrates that massive shift. On the left, you see the horse's past, the engine of war, the power for agriculture, the primary way to get around. And on the right, you see its present, a role that's really focused on leisure, ceremony, and some very specific specialized work. It's a total shift from being a universal necessity to a modern niche. So if the horse is no longer the world's engine, what does it actually do now? Well, you might be surprised by the sheer variety of important, and yes, sometimes controversial, jobs that horses still have in our modern world. I mean, look at this list. The modern working horse fills some amazing niches. In our cities, they serve as mounted police and power tourist carriages. Out in more remote areas, they're absolutely essential for search and rescue in terrain where a truck just can't go, and even for low-impact logging in sensitive forests. And maybe most profoundly, they serve in equine therapy, helping people heal. They have really found a new purpose. This quote from a Reddit user of all people just hits the nail on the head about a very unique modern job. A car can't really intimidate a crowd, but the sheer physical presence of a horse, that gives mounted police a powerful, non-lethal advantage. It's a really striking example of how this ancient partnership is still incredibly relevant today. A huge modern role for horses is, of course, tourism. But it's gone way beyond simple carriage rides. We're now in the age of what some people call Instagram enamel tourism, where the animal becomes kind of a prop for that perfect social media photo. And this trend, it creates a whole new set of pressures on these animals, and it raises some really complex ethical questions. And that brings us to our final and maybe our most important section. As we continue to use animals for work and for entertainment, we have to start asking ourselves some pretty difficult questions about the ethics of this relationship. What does a compassionate future actually look like? To get our heads around this, we have to talk about something called cognitive dissonance.
It's basically the gap between what we believe and what we do. A lot of tourists genuinely love animals, but when they're on holiday, they might do something they wouldn't do back home. It's that kind of when in Rome mindset that allows really well-meaning people to take part in attractions that might not be putting animal welfare first.
This creates a fundamental ethical conflict. On one side, you have the cultural traditions and the economic survival of local communities that really depend on these animals. But on the other side, you have this growing global movement pushing for universal animal welfare standards. So when these two things collide, trying to impose outside rules can feel a lot like cultural imperialism, and that creates a really complex and sensitive dilemma.
So how do we even begin to navigate this? Well, one really helpful tool is the 3Rs framework. First, replacement. Can an alternative, maybe a virtual experience, be used instead? Second is reduction. Can we minimize the number of animals involved? And third, refinement. Can we improve the conditions and the care for the animals that are working? This gives us a really practical way for both tourists and operators to think and to make more compassionate choices.
And so we end here with this question. For thousands of years, the horse has been our partner, our engine, our companion. Its role has changed dramatically, but its story isn't over. As we continue to shape the future, it's really our responsibility to decide what kind of relationship we're going to have and what place this magnificent animal will hold in it.